can't just go and test. You need to get an approval from FDA, which requires you to submit tens of thousands of pages of written reports. And that takes really like 3 to 6 months if you're really good at it. What we do is actually we streamline this process.
Weave is simplifying that process and doing the heavy lifting.
Most frequent questions receiving, is it hallucinating? Like if it's hallucinating, how are we gonna make sure? So there's a thresholding effect, all right? Like which means that if you're not 100% there, you're 0% there. We focused a lot on architecting, like showing a lot of examples, and it was, we got it working.
Hello everyone, I'm Umair, and today we have Umut Eser with us, who is a CTO at a high-tech startup called Weave. And in a bit, we will get to know more about Weave. We'll get to know more about how Umut have built that and what are the various underlying details, and in this age of AI, what these guys really are doing. So welcome on the show, Umut.
Thank you, Umair.
Before we dive into the startup that you're CTO, how about we get a little bit of your introduction, your background, the kind of work experience you have, and what landed you over here before we start talking about the startup currently you are heading as a CTO.
Yes, I'm good. I have a background in physics. I did my PhD at Stanford in applied physics systems biology intersection, mostly working on machine learning applied to biology, and then moved to Harvard Medical School, work on biomedical data integration using deep learning techniques, where we have like heterogeneous data sets. You learn representation learning and integrate those data. And afterwards, I've been around in venture firms, venture creation firms, like Ford Catalyzer, located in Connecticut, and mostly working on biomedical devices and drug repurposing. And then I came back to Boston, worked in flagship pioneering, and worked in particularly Celerity as a head of machine learning research team there, where we were working on drug discovery and AI intersection, building target identification tools. And then afterwards, I've worked at Dr. Evidence as a chief innovation officer, which is a software company serving to biopharma industry, mostly HOR, market access, regulatory affairs departments. I was mostly working on the research side, R&D side of the drug discovery there. And then afterwards, I met with my co-founders, Ari, and we decided to found Weave.
Wonderful. So from a PhD in applied physics to all the way to biotech and drug discovery. Quite a change in
Yes,
that sense. Yeah.
it's
So tell us
yeah.
more about what is that you guys are building at Weave?
Oh yeah. Weave is actually, as the name suggests, build upon a vision where we figured out. My co-founder has spent his time in memorial slow encountering for a long time, working on the clinical trial side. I was working on the drug discovery side, and then we both realized that there's a huge problem in biomedical, like drug discovery development, where there are a lot of silos. The data are not connected, communicated, and a lot of inefficiencies, and we wanted to weave together. That was the like overarching theme that why we founded it. But then we quickly realized that the regulatory interaction, regulatory communication is the backbone of all the efforts that's been like put in drug discovery and development. Eventually, what you're trying to do is you're trying to gather evidence for both safety and efficacy for your drug, and basically prove that you can manufacture in a high quality manner, and you need to report them. So all of the data are weaved together in the regulatory like backbone, right? And then that's why we wanted to focus on, like we wanted to solve that problem, because the huge inefficiencies are embedded in the entire communication, where you see a lot of narrative, which are written in the unstructured language, natural language. And we said, okay, you know what, like this is actually the point where we see the biggest impact can actually occur with the current technologies. And yeah, that's the
So
story.
essentially, during the drug discovery process, as you move through from your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials and gathering evidence, you have to do a lot of submission to regulatory organizations like FDA and so on for eventual approval of your drug. And what I'm gathering is that Weave is simplifying that process and doing the heavy lifting of creating all this, I would imagine, enormous set of documents and data and evidence, and submitting it to regulator for eventual approval. So that is the kind of heavy lifting you guys are doing at Weave.
So yeah, think about this. Okay, I need to give a little bit more background for people who doesn't know actually like how these regulatory submissions work. So at the beginning of the submission, it's called IND, Investigational New Drug Application, where you have a candidate drug, you want to test in clinical trials. You can't just go and test. You need to get an approval from FDA, which requires you to submit tens of thousands of pages of written reports, study
Hmm.
reports, right? Like and those study reports need to be organized in a very particular way called ECTD. There's just like particular way that FDA requires you to submit. And that takes really like 3 to 6 months if you're really good at it. If you're not good at it, it may take 9 months after you have all the data. So that's a huge like bottleneck. And what we do is actually we streamline these process. We convert all these like long processes into very, very fast, like quickly drafting, editing, verifying, and submitting. So that's what AI native platform allows you. It's not a like single AI solution. AI is diffused everywhere in our platform.
So understood. So talk to me a little bit more about the tech of the company. You are an
Uh-huh.
AI heavy company. So how you're using AI and what has it, I mean, I generally typically tend to kind of classify AI into two eras or two kind of distinct areas. One is your classical AI is where you had different models and you have classification, clustering, etc. algorithms, and you would do that and you can use them to predict project or prescribe certain analytics and so on and so forth. And then the entire LLM thing came along,
Uh-huh.
where you have kind of pre-trained foundational models and you can kind of instructionally tune them to uh, spit out various kind of information that we call prompt engineering. So talk to us a little bit about how what is the AI and how you are using it, and go into a little bit
Uh-huh.
of depth around it.
Uh-huh. So maybe I can like walk through the like user experience or user story that like I can point out which places that we use. Like for example, once you come into the platform, when you sign in, you need to upload the documents. Like you upload your raw study report documents, which needs to be classified. That's the first thing. Like which document is what. So that we use this classification to actually later refer to, link to it. So document classification, that's the first step where we use AI and summarization, brief summary, executive summary that tells about like what this document is about, and entity extraction. We extract all the entities, link behind the scene all these entities, so that you can quickly uh, find whatever you want to find and summarize in a table for all of your different studies, all sorts of things. This is data room. It's just a data room. We have a lot of different applications on that. And once you're done with the data room, then you go and template. You basically start drafting your application. Once you start drafting, it's the first thing you do is basically click on generate and it starts generating your drafts. And how is it generating? Well, that's we're using LLMs to actually generate based on uh, the study reports that we already extracted, like organized, structured, and put into database and vectorized it. And then now you can actually generate study reports, which links everything to each other whenever it's reported so that you can trace back. The second thing afterwards is you want to review it, like whether it's correct, right? People are often suspicious about if there's any hallucination because there's no room for hallucination in
Yeah,
regulatory
that was
applications,
that
right?
was my next question, that how you're dealing with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, maybe I can transition to that as well because
Yeah.
it's
So
also
yeah,
part of it. Like,
let's take over here and see.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, one of the biggest questions that we are receiving, most frequent questions receiving, is it hallucinating? Like, if it's hallucinating, how are we gonna make sure? So there's a thresholding effect, all right? Like, which means that if you're not 100% there, you're 0% there. Why? Because in order to verify in a classical sense, you have to read everything through, which might be longer, which might take longer time than for you to draft first in the first place, right? So there's
Right.
zero value if you don't do it right. So we
Right.
spend a lot of time to make sure it happens. And it's not only a technical solution, by the way, it has to be an integrated UX solution where user is involved in this process. So that's why we're not basically claiming 100% automation from end to end. We are claiming that the automation is embedded and you can tune it up and down. Like you can get in 100% manual because we have a editor, text editor. You can't go 100% automation. I mean, not 100%, 95%, 90% automation, but you can tune it like based on the user interface. That's the design first principle. Like we basically started design everything from this in mind. So there's PNP problem in computer science where
Yeah.
forward is easy, backward is really hard, like prime factor, like prime
Right.
number factorization kind of thing. So it's in that very similar manner. It's very hard to generate something 100% accurate, but it's very easy to verify it. So we made it super easy to verify. So
Okay.
we have another separate model that runs and reviews every piece, every single sentence and statements within the generated one, and actually flags them which ones might have problems. And for users, like when you hover individual sentence, you can see this original source file where they are mentioned side by side immediately. So the verification is super easy. Like you can point out which is embedded. But at the same time, we also perform a benchmarking analysis in our backend compared with the human prepared. This is the final draft and submitted to FDA and basically approved by FDA. There's several INDs that we have in our backend, and we compare. They are not really there. They're not, even the human drafted ones are not really 100% accurate. And ours is a little bit more accurate than the human written ones, like
Right.
which I can claim like 95%.
So generally, what I'm gathering is from your solution, so you have a kind of pre-processing where you are extracting entities, vectorizing, and all that. Uh, and then you're using LLMs to generate help generate the overall reports or documents that need to be submitted. And then there is a model that is evaluating what has been generated. So during the process, I'm a little curious. I just know AI enough to be dangerous. That I mean, are you using a lot of the pre-built foundational models for the work, or you have, I mean, kind of distilled the models or picked up some models or created your own that you have trained for this particular work or for any part of the work that you are doing over here?
Yeah, we're mostly using the pre-built, or sorry, like pre-built foundational
Foundation.
models using
Okay.
AI search, but we have some fine-tuned models for some particular uh, like instances. But still, it's based on the actual foundational model that these vendors are providing us, and we're building on top of that.
Right. So what I generally see that when you're using a foundational model, and as you have suggested, there's a lot of digital transformation work that also become part of the overall product. I mean, you need to have an editor where people can review and so on and so forth. Uh, Coming to just sticking with an AI for a bit. So as the models are improving, I mean, how you have, I mean, the very first example that come to our mind when people where people have built something on top of foundational model was case text, which they kind of sold to for $500 million or more to Thomson Reuters. In your case, I mean, how much of the AI models have you really had literally have to tune versus doing various extensive prompt engineering? I mean, single shot, zero
Uh-huh.
shot, few shots, or other
Uh-huh.
kind of prompt engineering to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, something that you need to realize early on is what to work on and what not to work on.
Sure.
Because as a startup, you have limited resource, limited time. Time is much more on the essence. And then we could have actually trained our own models. We could have collected a lot of data and basically fine tune it. But then we realized, you know what? But these models are already getting better and better
Yeah.
without us, right? And it's a baseline model. So let's focus on prompting right now so that we can actually update it later on. We don't have to worry about that. And we were right. Like at the beginning, it was not really there 2 years ago. Like it wasn't really creating a quality reports. We focused a lot on architecting, like showing a lot of examples, and we got it work. But now we don't need to provide lots of examples. It's
Right.
already like the base is already powerful. So we're mostly working on architectural aspects and making sure the platform works end-to-end integrated manner. So, I mean, you cannot really like use ChatGPT to create
Yeah.
your INDs and
Right. Right.
basically tap into thousands of pages. Yeah.
So, are there any specific agentic workflows also built into the overall software, or is it more like somebody? I mean, you have kind of already build the enough context in the model by pre-feeding it with prompts that are related to your particular problem? Or are there any agentic workflows also in the overall solution?
We're getting into that. So basically, why do you need an agentic workflow where if your scope is wide enough that you cannot cover every possible case, then you
Right.
need something that decides on the fly depending on like what the inputs are. But the place that we started, which was intentional, is actually let's focus on the scope where the edge cases are not that like long tail distribution is very much like confined so that we can write our own pipelines like chains, LLM chains, which
Mhm.
creates a lot of, I mean, the robustness is very, very important for us, right? Robustness and reliability. That's why we built there. Now we're expanding our workflows into more like higher coverage and getting more and more on the uh, reasoning aspect of actually IND communication. Now we're basically incorporating agentic workflows into that reasoning, that stepwise thinking.
Sure.
But it's coming later. It's not in the product yet.
All right, all right. And you're during this building this all this AI heavy this product for our more technical kind of audience, is there any preference that you found for a particular framework or building this stuff, or I mean any particular challenges you faced with certain parts of technologies?
Yeah, I mean, early on, we wanted to use one of those existing like frameworks, like build on top of it, so that we can have a like higher level
Which one?
configurations.
Which some of
Like,
the and some of the
all
framework?
right, I'll give the names.
All right, all
I
right. All
talked
right.
to Harrison in early on, like um, he was doing a really great job. Like 2 years ago, even LangChain was started, and we said,
Yeah.
okay, this is a great product. Like, let's work on that. We started working on that. It was amazing. But then we realized there were some like bottlenecks or issues, challenges that we came up with.
Mhm.
We still use that, but for Lemma Index, we were also using Lemma Index, and we realized there are a lot of pre-baked prompts which are generally designed. We didn't need that, and all the high level like wrappers we could have implemented by ourselves for our own purpose, and then we uh, actually get rid of all the
All right.
lemma index from our platform, and then we built our own.
All right. So what is the kind of selling model for this? Is it you're pricing it like more like a SaaS, or it's a solution on-prem? I mean, how you're pricing it? What is the go-to-market around it?
It's a SaaS platform, software as a service,
All
and
right.
the we have tiered subscription model
Mm-hmm.
with project-based pricing, like where like if you have many INDs, it basically the price scales with that, the volume-based, and then we also have volume discounts and different type of enterprise. So it's like we have a little bit uh, wide spectrum of our targets. Like it's not only big pharma, but there's also small biotech startups, which requires different treatment and mid-size. And there's also CROs, contract research organizations, whose job normally was actually including the writing these INDs, and we're working with them actually to provide solutions.
So many times the pricing becomes a little tricky with the AI-based products because as the underlying price of the foundational model and the tokens is decreasing, one struggles to figure out that whether you want to price the product on the user's dimension or on the number of tokens dimension. Or so, what are your pricing dimensions? I mean, you're charging it with users, or the number of
So
tokens, length, and so on.
it's a great question, but I think it's like uh, that applies more towards the consumer-based
Hmm.
facing consumer facing applications as well as a like low price solutions. Ours is I think it's premium price. The value proposition is not about actually like utilizing these LLMs, but actually creating an end-to-end solution much faster. So our margins are way higher than actually LLM costs. So we don't need to worry about like all these details, like how do you optimize that little
So it's
piece.
for relatively niche market where you can charge kind of high, and so I mean, how is the traction coming along? I mean, you have got a lot of customers. I mean, you're building up to a lot of customers. How it's coming along?
We are. I mean, I cannot disclose, of course, like all these customers at this point. We're not that like public yet, but it is getting very like I am really happy with the traction that we are seeing right now, where I can see, okay, now like we realize, okay, we need to hire more people to, uh, yeah.
Okay. And when you were when you thought about this idea and start building on it, I was reading somewhere that you guys have raised funding. So talk to a little bit more about how you find the overall funding scenario around AI, and was it easier, difficult? I mean, how the funding process you went about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were at a perfect timing when we got out. Like AI was also catching up, and then we had a great environment when we were racing. Even though the like macro environment was bad, but because of the AI is hot and everybody is talking about AI, like they were actually investors were looking at like into investing in AI and healthcare biology, and we were sitting in the intersection of it. Our thesis is very strong. Like the technology problem fit is very strong, right? The technology language model and the problem, like the domain, is basically notoriously like the natural language based communication, which
Right.
is super inefficient, and it was perfect. So we had an oversubscribed seed round, and so we're very well funded right now. We're gonna look for extension to scale up our applications to larger domains pretty soon. Actually, it's not that far.
Right. So, I mean, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is thinking about the problems to solve with these LLM or LLMs or foundational models? I mean,
Mm.
I also I do also angel investing, and I sometimes also poke around products here and there. But would really love to hear from you
Mhm.
that what kind of if I'm a founder today or want to do something, what kind of problem you think are really good to solve with these and will not become part of the foundational model very soon, and it's really it can take you somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of like thin wrappers where
Yeah.
basically take the LLM and not like apply to a particular domain, and then they were like quickly became obsolete based on a like future update in a ChatGPT or other
Right.
models. But actually, people don't really realize that these models are solving data communication layer. So that's kind of like unnoticed, not by everyone, but many people are not noticing it is you can convert any unstructured text into a structured version flexibly. That's the important part, right? Meaning that you don't need to predefine very strict data model that you're going to convert into.
Right.
And what does that mean? Well, algorithms and automation runs on structured data,
Right.
right? Now, look at the industries and look at the places where the communication is happening through in an unstructured, like manual, because it has to, right? Like in natural language form. Why? Because the application space is so large. There are a lot of like edge cases in biology, in healthcare, for example, drug discovery. Lots of different types of drugs. You cannot really like, I mean, there were some attempts to create a structured based communication with FDA, like just like let's do the structure, but it failed miserably. Why? Because there are a lot of different types of drugs, like cell therapies, like combination drugs, like biologics, small, and they require different treatments. They require different data models, right? But now it's possible. Why? Because LLMs can actually translate back and forth depending on just like whatever you want to ask. It's just a prompting. So think about like similar cases in different domains, maybe law, maybe some other place where the textual communication is the core, and which requires like data layer implementation with LLMs in it, where I don't think that these like OpenAI and other companies will build because that's very particular, very vertical, right?
So verticalized use cases where there is a lot of unstructured kind of natural language communication that happens,
Yeah,
and need to create an output. So I'm of the very similar opinion that this is
yeah,
where one great thing that this thing provides is to understand the natural language, and you don't have to create exact forms and fields to give the structure to it. So to your point, you don't need to have a exact data model built predeterminedly, and then a user can communicate in any way they want, and then you can still extract information out of that. So yeah, wonderful. I think these are the areas where I also believe that there are opportunities, and I think that 2025, 2026, there's going to be a lot of. I mean, it's a new. After SaaS is going to be a new wave where you have AI-based startups as well as
Yep.
agentic workflow startups. So, but thank you very much for your time today. I think we've learned a good deal about Weave. You guys have really literally picked up a very niche market, and I also think that the problem and that you're trying to solve has a perfect fit with the LLMs because there's a lot of text and there's a lot of textual generation. So good luck with your product, and I hope
Yep.
to catch back with you in a quarter or couple of quarters and see that you guys have done amazingly well with customer acquisition. So good luck with that.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mert. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us.